Young People's Literature finalist Gary D. Schmidt for OK for Now, published by Clarion Books, an imprint of Houghton, Mifflin, Harcourt.
Good evening. I'd like you to go back, please, if you would, for just a few moments, to your junior high years. You are walking into your school gymnasium. You are wearing your PE uniform. You are lining up into your squads. Your gym teacher is coming out of his office. He holds a whistle in one of his hands. With the other, he is bouncing a ball. He looks at you. I expect that for some of you here, I have just raised your level of anxiety. Coach Reed guessed that I hadn't learned anything at all, but he was going to give me a chance now. He told James Russell to put his shirt back on and get on over to the shirts team, and when James said he was fine on the skins team, Coach Reed gave him the kind of look that said he was going to gut him if he spoke one more word. James put his shirt on and walked over to the shirts team. "Sorry," he whispered when he walked by me. "Shut your face," Coach Reed said. Then Coach Reed, who was the kind of person that Joe Pepitone would probably want to pound into the dirt with his baseball bat, looked at me again. "Get over to the skins team," he said. Growled, really. I shrugged. What was I supposed to do? I walked over to the skins team. You can see I was really trying. "With your shirt off, Swiatek. You have to have your shirt off if you're on the skins team." I looked around at the other teams. "I think we're all smart enough to remember who's on our team," I said. It's not like we're gym teachers or something. Okay, so there I wasn't really trying. I guess I was sounding like Lucas. Coach Reed said, "Over there now," in a kind of double sergeant's voice, each word slow and apart and long, carrying a lot of atomic weight. "So you're going to shoot me if I don't?" I said. I think Coach Reed crossed the floor almost without touching it, and the words, "Who do you think you're talking to?" filled the gym. He reached for my shoulder, but when he reached, I pulled back, and all he got was my PE uniform shirt. Maybe that was what he wanted anyway. And I don't know if it was him reaching or me pulling or whatever it was. The whole stupid gym shirt got torn right down the whole way. Everything in the gym stopped. But this time, it wasn't because I was mouthing off to Coach Reed. It was because of what they saw. And what they saw, it's not any of your stupid business. It got around the whole stupid school in probably a minute and a half. When I walked down the hall after PE, it was like I was in this circle of silence. Ahead of me, people would be talking and laughing their heads off, and then they'd see me and stop talking. They'd hold their mouths shut like the funniest thing in the whole stupid world had just happened, and they wanted to bust out talking about it, but they couldn't until I walked by. So they'd watch until I got past them and then wait a couple of seconds, and then I'd hear them start up again, laughing their heads off, talking low enough so I couldn't hear exactly. You know what this feels like? When I got to Mr. Ferris's class, I walked to the door to this. Otis Bowden was standing over a group of guys, and he's tall, so he can look pretty threatening, and he was saying, "Shut up, just shut up." And Mr. Ferris was going over to calm things down, I guess, when everyone saw me come in, and everything went that eerie quiet. Mr. Ferris looked at me for a second, and then he said, "Let's all sit down and get started," except that I turned around and walked out. He came to the door and called after me, and I started running. So did he. We reached the front doors of Washington Irving Junior High School at the same time. He grabbed the bar handle so I couldn't open it. He grabbed the bar handle the next door so I couldn't open it, and the next. I reared back and hit him in the stomach as hard as I could. I know. After school detention for life. Didn't care. He grabbed my arm. So I was crying by now. So what? He walked me across the school lobby, slammed through the auditorium doors, shouted to the Washington Irving Junior High School brass quintet that they'd have to go practice somewhere else now, which they did in a hurry. He pushed me down into one of the auditorium chairs, sat next to me. He said, "Tell me." I tried to get up, and he pushed me back down. "Tell me," he said again. So I did. How my father came home late on the night of my 12th birthday, and how he'd missed everything because he'd been with Ernie Echo. How he sounded when my mother told him that. How he came up into my room with beer on his breath and told me we were going someplace for my birthday present and I should get dressed right now. How I said he didn't have to, and he smacked me and said he'd better not have to tell me again. How he'd taken me past my mother, who wasn't smiling. How we got into the beery car, And he gunned it and said, "Hadn't I always wished I could have a tattoo like Lucas did? Hadn't I?" I nodded. I was afraid not to. How we arrived at the mostly dark place and got out of the car, and I said I wanted to go home, but he looked at me with beer in his eyes, and I said I'd better get in there, so I did. How I lay down on this couch, and my father talked with this guy, and they laughed, and my father covered my eyes with his beery hands because this was a present, and he was picking out a real surprise, and this fat, sweaty guy bent over me, and I could smell and feel him close when he pulled on my shirt. How it started. And I said it hurt, and my father pushed me down with his hand over my eyes and said I'd better be still if I knew it was good for me. And so I did, even though I was crying then, too. How when it was done, after a long time, I looked into the mirror and saw the scroll and the flowers at each end, and the words I couldn't read, so the fat, sweaty guy read them for me, "Mama's baby." And I told Mr. Ferris how they both laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. The funniest thing in the whole stupid world, Mama's baby. How I spent days trying to wash it off and then trying to scratch it off until it bled. How I hadn't gone swimming since then. How I changed for PE in the locker room stalls. How I wished he would. Mr. Ferris didn't say anything the whole time. He sat next to me and listened. And when I finished, I looked at him. He was crying. I'm not lying. He was crying. I don't think it was because of how hard I hit him. I know how the black-backed gull feels when he looks up into the sky. Maybe somehow Mr. Ferris does too. Thank you.